Okay, so are you ready for a deep dive today?
Always ready.
We're diving into Islamic history and scripture, but with a twist.
Twist, you say?
Yeah, our source material is called Near Your Forbidden House, and it challenges traditional interpretations of some key locations mentioned in the Quran.
And are we talking like alternative theories here or full-on different locations?
Oh, this deep dive is going to take us down a fascinating path. Think linguistics, archaeology, even botany.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest.
Well, the author doesn't just offer opinions. He backs up his claims with some pretty compelling evidence. And let me be clear, we're not here to say one interpretation is right or wrong. We're putting on our explorer hats today and examining the evidence alongside the author, who's a respected scholar in religious studies.
Okay, so no need to pick sides then. Just follow the evidence.
Exactly. And let's just say his conclusions are anything but your typical Sunday school interpretations.
I'm intrigued already. One of his core arguments centers around the Arabic language and its use in poetry. He suggests that traditional interpretations might be missing some of those subtleties.
Hold on. Synonymous terms. Poetry. In a Quran. How does this all fit together?
It's like this. Many Arabic words have multiple layers of meaning that can get lost in translation. The author suggests that by looking at the Quran through a kind of poetic lens, we unlock a deeper understanding of its message.
So it's not just what the words say, but the layers of meaning woven into them.
Exactly. He's also challenging that traditional way of reading the Quran in strict chronological order. He says we should pay more attention to the order in which the events are actually presented as a key to unlocking the real meaning.
Now that's a new concept to me. So how does this all apply to the question of locations?
Let's look at Quran 2.124. It's where God commands Abraham to become a leader of people. And the author highlights this really interesting detail. Abraham's name changes right at this pivotal moment from Abram to Abraham.
You know, that's always fascinated me, even in the Bible. God changes Abram's name to Abraham when he makes his covenant with him.
Genesis 17.4-5 to be exact. Yeah. And here's where the author makes a connection. He suggests this name change isn't just symbolic. He ties it to a physical and spiritual transition in Abraham's life, moving from idolatry to enlightenment.
So it's not just Abraham's name that changes, but his whole spiritual direction. And this shift is mirrored geographically, right? This is where the location of the first house of God comes in.
Exactly. Quran 2.125 states that God commands Abraham to purify his house. Now, the traditional view points to the Kaaba in Mecca as this house,
right?
But our author sees it differently. He interprets purification as cleansing harmful influences and reclaiming what rightfully belongs to God.
Okay, now this is where things get interesting, because he's saying this house is actually BACCA Jerusalem, not Mecca.
Precisely.
He's talking about a spiritual and physical reclamation.
Exactly. He connects this idea of purification to the Prophet Muhammad too. Just as Abraham's transformation involved a physical and spiritual journey, the author suggests we see a similar pattern in Muhammad's life.
Wow, so it's like their missions are almost a reflection of each other. Both involve purification, a specific location, even a name change. The author even connects these name changes back to the same location, BACCA Jerusalem, and for the same purpose, to fulfill God's command.
And it goes even deeper. Quran 2.127 talks about Abraham and Ishmael raising the foundations of the house. The author points to those massive ancient stones beneath the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem as potential remnants of this construction.
Wait, are you serious? This is like one of those historical mysteries where clues have been hidden in plain sight for centuries.
You could say that.
It's like we're putting together a puzzle with pieces from scripture and archaeology.
And the way the author connects the dots is what makes this so compelling. He doesn't stop there. In Quran 3.97, we have the mention of clear signs that mark the location of this house. He interprets these signs as geographical features, mountains, valleys, even specific types of vegetation, all pointing to Jerusalem, not Mecca.
Wow, it's amazing how he uses so many different areas of study. Did he bring in botany too? I remember something about olive trees.
You're right. He mentions that olive trees, which are so important to the region's ecosystem, are native to Palestine, not the Arabian Peninsula. It's another piece of evidence supporting his theory that the house of God is in Jerusalem. And this leads us to one of his most thought-provoking arguments.
And what's that?
He proposes that the forbidden house in the Quran isn't the same as the sacred house of God, two distinct locations. He thinks the forbidden house is actually Mecca Petra, not the sacred house in BACCA Jerusalem.
Okay, now we're going off the map. Two separate locations with different purposes. This changes everything we thought we knew.
And he makes a clear linguistic distinction between sacred haram and forbidden muharram. He's arguing that the forbidden house represents a place where worship is actually prohibited, The sacred house, on the other hand, is a place for pilgrimage and prayer.
So we're talking about Abraham being commanded to purify the sacred house in Bacca, Jerusalem, while his family lives near but not in the forbidden house in Mecca, Petra.
Exactly. 2 locations, 2 distinct purposes, all woven into Abraham's journey. And this is where the author throws in another curveball.
Hit me with it.
He argues that there's absolutely no Quranic evidence to support that whole traditional story of Abraham leaving Hagar and Ishmael in the desert.
Wait, really? That's a bold claim. That story is so central to the significance of Mecca. What evidence does he have to back that up?
He dissects the use of the word near in the Quran. He says it shouldn't be interpreted as in head when describing the location of Abraham's family. He's proposing they were close to the forbidden house, but not actually inside it.
So if they weren't in the desert by the forbidden house, where does he think they were? This is getting good.
He points to those verses that mention the village and the city. He thinks those represent 2 different places.
Okay.
He says the village is Mecca Petra, and the city is Bacca, Jerusalem. So he's suggesting Abraham actually left his family in a settlement that was near but not inside the forbidden house in Mecca Petra.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I'm following this. We have the sacred house in Bacca, Jerusalem, and the forbidden house in Mecca Petra. And Abraham's family is living near the forbidden house but not inside it while he's off purifying the sacred house.
Right.
Yeah. 2 important locations, 2 different purposes. It really makes you see the traditional story in a whole new light.
It definitely does. Yeah. So to be clear, the author is saying the true house of God is a real physical place. It's Bacca, Jerusalem. It's been in the same place since Adam. And Abraham was specifically commanded to purify it. Did I get that right? Exactly. 4 key points he keeps coming back to.
It's amazing how he connects all of this. It really makes you question everything you thought you knew.
And he doesn't shy away from tackling even the most established beliefs, like that Zam Zam well in Mecca.
You mean the one that's supposed to be a holy source of water? The one that's so important to the pilgrimage?
That's the one.
What does he say about that?
Well, for starters, he brings up that whole issue of there not being much natural water in the desert. And he highlights some scientific findings that suggest a good chunk of the Zam Zam well water has either dried up or been contaminated over time.
Hold on. Is he implying that the Zam Zam well isn't actually the miraculous spring everyone thinks it is?
That's exactly what he's saying. He thinks it was dug by people to get to groundwater. So he's questioning that whole idea of the water being inherently sacred.
Wow. That's definitely a different take on things. You know, it's amazing how history and faith and even geology can all intertwine like this. To think that a well made by humans could become so religiously significant is mind-blowing.
It really shows you the power of belief and how narratives can change over time. But he doesn't stop there. He also analyzes those verses in Quran 19.49 and 21.7172, where Abraham leaves Mecca Petra for Bacca, Jerusalem.
What's the significance of those verses for his argument?
He thinks they show this pattern of prophets moving from east to west, from Mecca Petra to Bacca, Jerusalem. Like it's further proof that Bacca, Jerusalem is the real location of the sacred house.
This is where having that poetic lens and a geographical perspective comes in handy. It's like looking at a tapestry. All the threads are there, but you have to step back to see the whole picture. And just a reminder to our listeners, we're just presenting a different perspective here, not saying one view is right or wrong.
Right. It's all about getting people to think critically and explore these ideas. The author also questions the idea that Abraham was giving up on his mission by leaving Hagar and Ishmael near the forbidden house. He points out how the Quran mentions Ishmael reaching the age of striving, meaning he was old enough to help his father.
Oh, that's an interesting point. If Ishmael was old enough to contribute to Abraham's mission, then maybe their time near the forbidden house wasn't about being abandoned, but about getting ready and growing.
Exactly. It challenges us to think about the possibility that they were working together, father and son, to establish a righteous community.
This deep dive has been really thought-provoking. I mean, near your forbidden house has challenged so many assumptions about Abraham's journey, the house of God, even the Zam Zam well.
It really makes you think differently.
It does. So much to unpack. From linguistics to geography to the evolution of narratives, it all circles back to that central question. Where is the true house of God? And what happens when we reinterpret its location?
That's really what the author wants us to grapple with. He's saying that understanding the true location of the house of God is key to understanding the real message of the Quran.
And he goes even further. He suggests that this reinterpretation could totally change how we view the relationship between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
It's a huge paradigm shift. Recognizing Mecca, Jerusalem as the true house of God means acknowledging a shared sacred space for all 3 Abrahamic faiths. a place where their histories and beliefs come together.
It's amazing to think that a different understanding of these locations could lead to greater understanding and dialogue between faiths. It just shows you how powerful interpretations of history and scripture can be.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of engaging with these texts and interpretations critically and with open minds.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Near Your Forbidden House, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
The author is urging us to question our assumptions, to look beyond traditional interpretations. Through linguistic analysis, historical connections, and archaeology, he argues that the true house of God is in Bacca, Jerusalem, not Mecca. He presents the Forbidden House as a separate location, Mecca Petra, and he reframes Abraham's mission as one of purification and building a community of believers.
And maybe most importantly, he introduces this idea of a shared sacred space for Jews, Christians, and Muslims, a space where their stories intersect. It's a powerful image that challenges us to rethink those boundaries we put between faiths.
It's a call for a deeper, more inclusive understanding of the Abrahamic traditions and their shared heritage.
This deep dive has been an amazing journey. And instead of giving us easy answers near your forbidden house, have given us even more questions and paths to explore. It reminds us that knowledge isn't about memorizing facts, but about embracing discovery and challenging our own beliefs.
It's about accepting that our understanding of history, scripture, and faith is always evolving, always open to new insights and new interpretations.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. If, as the author suggests, Bacca, Jerusalem is the true location of the house of God, what does that mean for how we view the relationship between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? Could this be a step towards greater harmony between these faiths? Something to think about as you continue your own exploration of this topic.